Okay, let's get started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Smart Stage. My name is Melissa Andresko, and I am the Chief Corporate Brand Ambassador at Lutron Electronics. I have been with the company for 26 years, and I'm so pleased to be here today with our esteemed panelists to talk about the balance of natural light and interior light. So we've got some great insights coming, so again, we want to thank you for joining us. I want to just take a moment to introduce our panelists. So to my immediate left, this is Margaret Block, and she is the Shades Business Development Manager at Lutron. Next to Margaret, we have Gregg Mackell, who is the Principal of HLB Lighting Design. Next to Gregg, we have Marina Skiles, who is a Senior Interior Architect and Interior Designer at the Z Group Architects. And last but not least, we have Andy Timmons, who is the owner of the ALEA Group. So I think one of the things that we are really looking forward to focusing on today is how to really put together this dream team to really serve your clients' best needs. So working with an integrator, working with an architect, an interior designer, how does that magic all happen when you've got these different forces coming together to create a cohesive design and to please your clients? So just a little bit about Lutron. So Lutron is best known as the dimming company. We brought lighting controls to the CEDIA community 33 years ago, believe it or not. We've been around as a company since 1961, but we've been supporting the CEDIA community now for the past 33 years. So, we brought this category to the community. We showed the integrators how to be successful. Fast forward to the early 2000s, we introduced the category of motorized shade control. And we showed you how to be successful with roller shades, Roman shades, draperies, whether they were battery powered or hardwired, so many options. And that's really a field that we continue to constantly evolve, and we're seeing so much success among the integration community. But then the game really changed. In 2018, Lutron acquired a company called Ketra. And Ketra is really best known for having a system that mimics the outside light inside. And it's just this revolutionary concept that we like to call intelligent lighting systems. So today, our focus is really going to be on the merging of those two things. How do you bring daylight into the home? How do you focus more and more on lighting for your clients? And I will say that, lighting is continuing to be of growing importance. Lutron did a study last year with Harris, and 91% of US homeowners said that lighting is one of the most important design elements in their home. So that just goes to show you that, again, whether it's for wellness purposes, whether it's for enhancing the design of the home, this is something that is going to be really an area of continued growth. So with that, I would like to start with our panel. So Gregg and Marina, I want to start with you. Another statistic from our survey, 82% of US homeowners said it's important to have a connection to nature in their home in their day-to-day lives. So my question is two-pronged. So number one, tell us about your client experiences. How are your clients prioritizing lighting in their homes? And is their concentration more on a specific room or rooms, or is it more of a whole house approach? And Gregg, I'll start with you.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. Is this on? Okay. So when we work with clients, we work as a team approach. So if we're working with somebody like Marina, then we will get together, we'll have design meetings, we'll look over building elevations, sections, models, and there are definitely rooms, you might see a great room that's got walls of glass that go to the outside and really give you that connection from the inside to the outside. But we may also see that we've got spaces that it's built into the side of a mountain, and you've got a bedroom with a bathroom, and it's kind of tucked into the mountain, and the only daylight's coming through a 30-foot light well down to this interior space. So when we look at daylighting and how that relates to the electric lighting, in spaces where you have the walls of glass, it's really important for us to be able to do something on the interior of the space to help balance that. or else it can feel very glary. You know, if everybody can think of a time you're sitting in some really nice restaurant and there's a window right there and you're talking to somebody and you can't see their face because they're just a silhouette and it's just this really bright space and everything else feels dark. It's because your pupil has shrunk really small because of all the glare outside. So what we're always trying to do is not just address the lighting design from trying to hit certain foot candle level, but think about how we're going to balance the space and reduce glare. And by using things like, we may use pinhole apertures on downlights or louvers to cut down on the glare. And your eye will adjust to the brightest thing you see. So if you have glary lights on the inside, or you have windows that don't have proper shading to them, and you just have all this bright light coming in, then you know, you're going to feel, you may have a brightly lit space, but relative to everything else, it feels dark because you have 15,000 foot candles outside today in Colorado, and inside, you know, try to hit that with electric lighting, and it's impossible. So we're constantly doing that, and then when we start working on things like the automated shades, that's really where the interiors team, I think, kind of picks up from us.
Yeah, very good. Marina?
I would also just say that we're working, like, from an architectural standpoint, working with creating spaces that go from interior to exterior in terms of ceiling planes, to your point, so that the lighting is continuous from inside to out. Because I think your initial question was like, how do we create that connection, which is so important in Colorado. And so using that lighting plane to like blur the difference between inside and out, whether it's winter or summer.
Right. Now, just a quick follow-up question. So, you know, I shared some of these statistics. So would you say that your clients are asking you to do this for them, make this connection, or is it something that you're bringing to them and they're like, oh, I would love that idea? Or would you say that the awareness of this, you know, again, this focus on lighting, is it something that they're aware of and asking for, or are you bringing it to them?
Depends on the client, obviously.
Okay.
But I mean, my Colorado clients are all about, like, how do I engage with that outdoors all the time?
Yeah.
Whereas I have Florida or Texas clients who are like, we're not used to the outdoors because it's so hot, you know, so we're trying
keep that
to
sun out.
that. It's just, it's a matter of education with our clients.
Okay.
Do you
very
agree?
Good.
Yeah, I think that where people come from, and you know, we all do a lot of work in the mountain resort communities, and so it's a lot of second homeowners that come from somewhere else. And if you look at the architecture that's being designed in South Florida or, you know, Texas Hill Country, it's very different than you see in Colorado. But, you know, the trend right now is just really expansive, you know, walls of glass on so many spaces where the windows are floor to ceiling. And that's where, you know, shading becomes a really, really important part of being able to make the space livable.
Yeah. Okay, so Andy, I want to turn to you for our next question. So how are you helping your clients work daylight into their spaces? And again, is it something that they're asking for, or are you bringing them this concept and they're going, oh yeah, I have to have that?
Yeah, again, I think it's both. If they are not coming to us with that discussion, we are certainly presenting it. And our approach to this whole discussion is how this lighting makes you feel, and it's about the environment that you're creating. And it's, you know, we have experts up here that can talk all day about the right way to do things, but us, it's all about the experience and the experience that we're giving our clients, and controlling that daylight is a big part of it. Controlling it with shading is one aspect of controlling daylight that we've been using for years, but now with the introduction of Ketra and bringing in that outside environment in, it's a really cool experience for the homeowners, but also that vibe that it gives them, whether they're waking up and working with that daylight control, or say it's a gray day outside and it's a muggy day outside. If you have that nice 4,000 Kelvin temperature inside, it still feels like it's a nice day when you're inside of your home, even though it's gray outside. So there's a way to have that discussion with them that's about creating the environment for them that is a nice, comfortable environment for them in their home, regardless of what's happening outside.
Well, and I think one of the other benefits that Lutron often talks about, the importance of being able to control the daylight aspect is preserving floors, preserving furniture, preserving artwork. You're in the Aspen market. I assume that you've got some very high-end clients who want to preserve some probably pretty priceless artwork and some pretty amazing floors. Does that come up a lot in conversation? And when they realize that they can do that, I would imagine that's a very quick yes to get them there.
Very much so. We end up with shades on windows that we're not concerned about privacy or blackout. It's purely for sun protection.
Yeah.
And these two do a great job of designing a home and bringing in the interiors, and we want to protect that as best we can. And it's very easy to show a client in a house that doesn't have sun protection just pulling up a rug and seeing the difference on their wood floors.
Yeah.
So it's a really easy conversation to have. But yeah, the sun can certainly ruin not only their interiors but also their artwork. We have clients that spend a lot of money on art, and we want to protect that.
Yeah, very good. So Margaret, I'm going to go to you next. So obviously Margaret is one of my colleagues at Lutron. What are some of the trends? What are you hearing from our customers? What is Lutron thinking about in terms of in that natural light control space, kind of the next big thing that we're doing?
Yeah, well, I want to kind of allude to what Andy was saying in terms of how we think about what comes next for us and how we respond to trends. A lot of it, again, is creating those spaces in a home that change the way you feel, because we feel light, whether it's artificial light, whether it's daylight coming in from the windows, all of that affects how you live and how you function in your home, right? So when we think of trends, we sort of already talked about it already, but expansive glass keeps getting wider and wider and taller, and so we want to try to keep up with that with shades that are wider and wider and can go taller and taller, and that's a big focus for us. Another thing we're seeing a lot of is requests for integration with data inputs. So, for example, understanding how where the sun might be during the day relative to the facade of your window, and being able to understand what preset my shade may go to protect furnishings more effectively, right? To not have a homeowner need to think about that, but to have things like that happen automatically. So we're very focused on kind of adding that layer of intelligence to systems, especially when you pair it all together with lighting control systems that can actually understand where your shade levels are and then balance that lighting really effectively. I mean, it's absolutely magical when this stuff comes together and when everybody's thinking about that same effect and can put this together for their clients.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about natural light optimization? Because that's something that we're focusing on here at the show. I think it's just such a cool concept. And you just barely touched on it, but just give us a little bit more.
Sure, I love talking about natural light optimization. So it's a new feature we just launched at Lutron, and basically it takes inputs like your physical location of your home, so your latitude, longitude. It takes an input of your orientation of your windows, so north, south, east, west, and it uses an algorithm that knows where the sun is at any given point over the course of the year. And obviously that's a changing point throughout the course of the year. So the summer sun 2 hours after sunrise is very different than winter sun 2 hours after sunrise. And so what we've done is put together a series of curated templates that make it really easy for dealers to program shade positioning relative to what that sun needs to do. And if you know that protecting furnishings and floorings is important, we have suggested presets to help make that easy to set up. But all of this is tweakable. All of this can be controlled by the homeowner afterwards if they want to enable or disable. And it's just it's a really fabulous and intelligent feature that we're excited to talk about this year.
And mind if I jump in?
Jump in.
We have some experience with that, in not with latitude and longitude, but more like sitting there and programming it over time, where we worked on a house that had pretty extensive windows and all these octagonal rooms up on San Juan Island off the coast of Seattle, where in the winter the sun is just, it's like you picture being in Alaska where the sun just kind of goes like that all day long. And it was like that up there. But having the shades just kind of automatically come down, and then as the sun comes across, the next bank comes down and these come up, it leaves you with that connection to the outside.
Yeah.
Then helps take care of the glare when you have that view. And I think the fact that now it's all automated like that is very cool.
So I have a personal story that I'll share. So this past June, I got to go to an industry event in Stockholm, Sweden, where the week that I was there, longest days of the year, 21 hours of almost full sunlight. and our hotel did not have any blackout shades. And when I tell you at 3:30 in the morning, it looked like it was 4:15 in the afternoon. I mean, there was still bright sun. You know, you could see the moon and the sun at the same time. And I'm thinking, what an opportunity. And it was funny because the first night that we were all there for this conference, the next day, so many people were like, hey, Melissa, do you think Lutron could tell these guys about blackout shades? Like, nobody got any sleep the whole time we were there. It was pretty funny. So I imagine that countries like Sweden might benefit from learning more about motorized shade control. So anyway, going back to intelligent lighting systems. Now this is again, a fairly new concept for a lot of people and for a lot of dealers. I've been sitting in on some of the lighting education sessions and, you know, polling people like, do you know what Ketra is? Do you know what intelligent lighting systems are? And it's still very much an opportunity for continued education. So Gregg, with this being such a new concept to a lot of people, this concept of white tuning, you had a beautiful display of Ketra using all kinds of different colors at your lovely gallery the other night. How do you get your clients to yes when it comes to selling them a system like this? You told us you had a pretty good value proposition story that you share with your clients. How do you get them to understand that yes, this might be a little bit more investment in fixtures, but the benefits are going to definitely outweigh the cost?
Yeah, well, we have a demo space that we've set up where we worked in the dynamic Ketra lighting, and we've got the ability to, without lighting, to be able to demonstrate any of the technologies that we have available. So as a lighting designer, specifier, you know, somebody who's independent of the product, I'm always searching for the best product for the job. And I like to demo for homeowners. I take them into the conference room and we'll just show them, okay, here's 3,000 Kelvin, here's what it's like bright, here's what it's like when it's dim, here's 2,700 bright, dim, and here's what warm dim looks like. So you're at kind of a neutral white, and then when you dim it, it warms up, but you can't have it dim and change the color. So then we show them tunable white, where you can have the light dim, but you can tune the color to exactly what you want. You're not fixed with that dimming curve that you get with the warm dim. And then we show them the full Ketra circadian rhythm demo, and I think what's very effective with that is where we have blackout shades, and you turn the lights to 6,000 Kelvin, and you're like, why would you ever want that in a house?
Right.
Then you pull the shades up, and then you go, wow. You know, and when you have lights that are left on at like 3,000, they look very yellow and kind of dingy. And the ones that are matching daylight through the software, you know, they look a lot more natural. And I actually had a demo of this. It was right about the time when Lutron bought Ketra. And it just blew my mind because, you know, humans, we've never had this technology before.
Right.
And I sat there thinking with the shades down, like nobody's ever going to want 6,000 Kelvin in their house. And then, man, shades go up and it was like, wow, it actually looks better than what I've been doing.
Right.
And I think that the thing that I love the most about dynamic lighting is that you're not going to pick the wrong color of light. And I think our clients get so scared that, you know, I lock into something, what if I don't like it? Or what if I, you know, change the color of the paint? Is it going to look bad?
Yeah.
But when you have a system that's dynamic and through programming, and for our event the other night, I don't program systems anymore, but I was programming the Ketra stuff, trying to figure it out right before this big event I was having, and the programming was really straightforward. So I think where before it was really complicated with things like DMX programming, and you almost had to have a theatrical lighting designer come in there and do all the programming. But it's very simple now to create these colors, tune the colors, have it be a dynamic sequence that it goes through. But I also find that with our lighting designs that it's not just about the technology and the fixture, but we have to work with the interiors and the architect, that we may have a wall of glass in one room and then you walk back in a hallway and that hallway has no daylight in it.
Right.
And as you make that transition, all of a sudden now the lights that look really natural, where you have that exposure to daylight, don't look natural at all. And that's where we work with the other people on the design team to throw out ideas like, hey, let's create a faux skylight at the end of this hall, or let's create something that looks like daylight coming through a window. And now when you turn that corner on the hall, now you have something, you didn't lose that connection to the outdoors. And now that we have like linear lights and
Right.
and downlights that can sync together and do the same thing, it's it's still not, we still don't have everything, but the more and more products that we have that we can tune the light, our designs are starting to become more cohesive. And I just see a future where every light, the decorative chandeliers that are picked by the interior designer, and wall sconces and table lamps, everything is in sync with each other, and I think that makes the spaces just, they're going to be so livable when we have the full gamut of everything that we can design.
Yeah. Were you going to jump in, Marina?
Yeah,
About
can I jump
Yeah,
in?
Jump in.
I was just going to say we have such a broad bandwidth of clients. We do have the second and third homeowners that, like, for example, Gregg and I worked on a project where the client wanted to be up at 3 a.m. working, and so this system worked perfectly for him so that he could feel like he was in the morning light. But I also have clients who are raising children and live in Aspen full time, and they want to have a room where one kid is napping and another kid is gaming. And the synchronization that Gregg was just speaking to, I think, is extraordinary. And also, the one thing I'm hearing from clients on a day-to-day basis is simple, simple, simple. And how do we keep things simple? And I think we're finally getting there, where the control systems are able to be monitored and activated in a very simple interface.
Yeah, and you have to be a great integrator and know what you're doing if you're going to sell these things. And Andy, I know, has been knee deep in this stuff for a long time, and when we work with him, I just know him and his team really know Ketra and understand it, and they can go ahead and make these sequences happen in a way that's to the homeowner is simple, because it has to be simple. If it's complicated, like a lot of the DMX stuff, then people just come back, and in my experience, just give me 3,000 Kelvin, and that's, and then they end up with something that they've paid for this great system. But if you don't have, the integrator that's got the proper training and experience, then, the whole thing can fall apart. So to me, it's really important to have a great team that we put together from the design side, but then also the implementation side, and that all has to work together in order for it to be a successful project.
Well, and that's a great segue, because that was going to be my next question, is talking about how do you work together? I think one of the things that we're hearing from a lot of our integrators is that they're being pulled into projects where there is an architect, there's a lighting designer and or an interior designer, and everybody's not really sure what role they play with an integrator on the scene. So it's becoming more and more prevalent that this is happening, and that these teams are coming together to please their common clients. So Andy, can you talk about, how is this happening more and more, and how do you define each person's role on the job when it comes to the lighting and the shading and the even the keypad color, if you will?
Yeah, sure. So as the integrator, we don't necessarily need to define those roles. Those roles are defined for us. But it's important to take a team approach to this entire avenue of selling Ketra on a project. And if it's not already specified when it comes to you, and you do want to share that with the homeowner, it's really important to include all the team members first, because oftentimes that conversation may have already been had from an interior design or a lighting design aspect, and they may have already had those conversations with the homeowner, and you don't want to bombard them with things they've already been talked about and kind of push them away or push them down an avenue that they've already had a discussion about. So it's important, if you want to present that, to bring all the team members together and ask the questions ahead of time, and ask them if they think this product is even right for this job. Ketra is not right for every project. It is right for most projects, but not every single project. So having that discussion with the team members that are already at play is really important first. And oftentimes when I call Gregg and ask if he's had this discussion about Ketra already, and he says may have touched on it, but feel free, have at it. It's really important to preserve the specs and the conversations that have already been had for that homeowner, so they feel comfortable and invited into the conversation along with you, and they realize that we're approaching this as a team, as a specifier, as the designer, as the interiors. We're coming to this as a team in order to make sure that their project is done in a way that they know that we really care.
Yeah.
We care as a team about what this approach is, because there's dollars behind this. And the beauty of what Gregg does with his demo, it was showing static 3000, static 2700, and then warm dim, and that he's doing all of that with one Ketra light. And that's the only light source you can use that I know of that can actually do all of those for one demo. So you can show each client all of these different dramatic lighting events, but it's all being done with Ketra. And once you get to the end of that demo and explain to them that I'm kind of the nuts and bolts of this conversation and the dollars of this conversation, so you can set it to 2700 and tell them this will cost X, and then you can change it to 3000 and this will cost X, and then give them that kind of understanding of, by the time you get to that Ketra price tag, it's actually not as expensive as what you think it is, because you're removing all the back house equipment, you're removing a lot of the wire, a lot of the labor, and it's a really simple system. And to touch on that simplicity side of things, as the integrator, it is really, really important to keep it simple. We've been doing this for years, and when lighting control systems first came out and we had 9 buttons on a keypad, we thought that we needed to have 9 buttons on every keypad and figure out what to do with them all. And turns out homeowners press the top button for on and the bottom button for off. So there's very few buttons.
Breaks our heart to hear, by the way.
Yeah, well, so we've now seen what the trend is, and it's really just to make it really simple for these clients. And you can do that with Ketra and Lutron and give them an experience where the house is working in the background and they're not even noticing it. With one button, you can control an entire environment, and it just feels comfortable all day long, and they didn't have to do anything.
And if I could
Please, jump in.
One of the other things to think about, if you are going to if you do have a showroom and you're going to take a client in, but you are working with a lighting designer on a project, an interior designer, the architect, what I really appreciate about Andy is he calls me first and lets me know, hey, I've talked to the homeowner, they're coming in, because there are, no light source I've ever used is, good for everything. And, we may have issues like 12-inch on-center framing, and housings don't fit for certain lights. And so it may exclude being able to use something on a project because of what we know about that's happening with the structure, or, something else. Or, you may have somebody over to your showroom and show them square apertures, but Marina's like, no, we got to do round. And now the homeowner, and you just made Marina mad by showing her something that she was going the other direction. So I think by having the design team in the loop ahead of time, then you can head off any sort of weirdness that could happen that comes out of a meeting like that.
Wouldn't be the first time I made Marina mad.
And you don't want to do that. So, Marina, have you ever had an instance where a client has said to you, hey, I've heard about this technology about motorized shades or lights, and then you are calling Andy or Gregg? Like, talk about how are you pulling them in if they don't already have an integrator on the job or a lighting designer on the job?
Great question. I've pulled both of them in on numerous occasions.
Amazing.
Most recently, Andy, to help sell the Ketra system. And I think the value that the team brings as architect, interior designer, integrator is just what Andy and Gregg were both saying, that we're all working for the client's best interest, and we all know the goals. It is a hard sell because there's a lot of people out there who don't understand the benefits, and so it's like the showrooms that you guys both have that bring the comfort to the table. But for a lot of our clients who are out of state, that's where the magic that Andy and Gregg bring to the table come in really handy, because it's how do you present this at a distance? Because a lot of our clients they're in Europe, they're in Florida,
Sure.
they're in Texas. How do you present this without that kind of instant gratification of a showroom, and that's where really being able to speak to the technology comes in handy.
That's where the Lutron Lex app would also really come in handy. There's a shameless plug. We have that amazing new app that lets you literally, see what you take a picture of a room and it'll show you what it looks like with, different shade opacities, and it's amazing. But anyway, I digress.
But I'll tell you this, for anybody that's got a showroom and a demo space, or if you're taking somebody to a showroom or a demo space, if you want to unsell something, have it not work. So just really make sure. I've had clients go in and literally the company that they interviewed with lost a multi-million-dollar contract because they pull up their touchscreen and it locked up on them. And clients are like, I'm hiring the guy whose touchscreen works.
Yeah.
So just make sure that you understand how everything's going to work. When you press a button, you know what that's going to do, and that will do you wonders as far as getting clients to be on board, because they're scared to death of something that's going to be changing colors and doing different things. They're like, oh, it's complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated, but you have to be able to show them that you're going to make it easy and just have them press a button or pull up the app and press a button and the shades go up and down, the lights change, whatever. But it's, if you can use an app, you can use the Lutron app, you can use any other, control system app. And I think having it user-friendly is just super important to get a client on board with going with whatever technology is being designed.
Well, there's so many different interfaces now. Like we can customize the interface based on whether they're Gen Z or boomers. There's just way different. 20 years ago, we did not have that. It was like a panel, like you were talking about. So that's what I love about this. It's like, how do you want to interface with your house? How do you want to, on the plane, do you want to have the app to like turn on your lights before you get home? That kind of stuff didn't exist 20 years ago, and now there's so many different ways to interface.
Yeah. So Margaret, obviously our folks are all talking about the importance of these design teams working together and having, giving the client peace of mind that everybody's on the same page. What are some of the tools that Lutron is giving to integrators to help facilitate these relationships and help educate the specification community on these products?
Yeah, I think it comes down to actually what Marina said, which is getting clients to understand what it feels like, right? Which is, it's hard to do, right? It's really hard to talk about this technology if you don't experience it. And so it's one thing to say, come to my beautiful showroom and I'm going to give you this display and demo and you're going to understand it when you leave. But it's another thing to say, hey, you're in London and I'm in Aspen and I'm going to try to explain the system to you. So we spend a lot of time researching and investing in narratives and demonstration tools and storytelling tools that are both in-person and mobile remote. So a lot of investment in experience centers all over the world. Like we, not here in Denver. We got a couple in New York City, in Austin, in Southern California, Toronto, London, like in a lot of different places, so we can bring people in and really give them that immersive experience. Melissa, you talked about our luxury experience app, which is an attempt to bring that to someone, right? To show them all these different settings and let them experience it firsthand. We also try to just make it simple. Like, we know it can be complicated, especially if it's your first time doing a project with integrated lighting, intelligent shades. And we try to just make the specs easy to find, easy to understand, the fabrics easy to access, and just try to simplify as much as possible so that when you get in the hands of experts, you've got all the tools you need to really present it to a client simply.
Great. So we're going to save some time for Q&A, but before we do that, I do have one final question that I would like the three of you to answer. So I'll start with you, Andy. What advice would you give to an integrator who is new to working with the specification community, that they really wish they could team up with somebody in their market so that they can have this, symbiotic relationship? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I think you said it. Teaming up with people in their market is really important. So many of us integrators, we're not lighting designers, and the lighting industry became new to us 2 to 3 years ago. And my advice would be, don't act like you're the specialist. Bring in team members and specialists that can help you, that can speak that language, and that can help guide the owner towards the right product for their project. The last thing you want to do is pretend like you are a lighting designer and that you're going to put the circles and squares on the paper for them. It leads to a process where you're selling a product to a client that might not necessarily need all of that, and it might not be the right fit for them at the end of the day. So team up with your local professionals in the area, have conversations with them. I guarantee you most of them are always going to be receptive to have conversations and help out on the project, and really bring that team approach in order for the lighting to be a part of your projects.
Great. So it's literally as simple as a cold call?
Absolutely.
Wow, very
Or
good.
Gregg has a lot of business cards he can hand them out.
Okay, next, Marina.
At the risk of sounding like a broken record, I think collaboration is key. That's, at its essence, design is a collaborative endeavor. And we can't do what we do without a whole team of people.
Yeah.
Like, we orchestrate on a day-to-day basis dozens of consultants, and so bringing that in, and also that it gives everybody a chance to learn from each other.
Yeah.
And that collaboration also critically includes the client. And at the end of the day, we're a service industry, and then bringing the client in and helping them understand what they want through us,
Yeah.
is key.
I want to just go back because I love something that Andy said, and I want to make sure I reiterate your point about don't pretend to be the expert. I love that because, I just was at an event in New York City with the National Kitchen and Bath Association, and these designers said, I'm terrified when the T word comes up, technology, because I don't know what to tell them. I don't know enough about this to sound educated, and I said, well, look, there's this whole association of people who can help you. So, I love that you said that because that's very important. You don't need to pretend to be the expert in this when there's so many people who can help you. So
Yeah, we are the experts at programming and integrating and presenting that to the client that you are the expert in those fields, but we're not lighting designers. And we have this product that very much can change the world that you live in at home, and selling that to them but bringing in the right people is the most important part of that conversation.
Yeah. Gregg, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just think that we, at least myself and my team, we're very collaborative because we can't pull off a project without having interiors to design for, without having architects who get us involved with the project, without having people that can implement our designs, manufacturers that can make the stuff we're trying to use on a project. So, I mean, we need that whole team. But when we work with integrators, it's a very collaborative thing where it's more of a handoff. So we're not really doing redundant work. We design things to a certain point, hand it off, system gets designed, we take it through, all the difficulty that happens through construction where they change the thickness of the ceiling and the fixtures have been ordered, all those kinds of things that happen. And we take that off of everybody's plate and deal with that ourselves, and hopefully make it less painful for everybody else on the project. And then at the end, we come out and do the fine tuning. So you have a client that's got a collection of Monets, or just went out and spent $20 million on a Picasso and hung it over their fireplace, and they do not want to have that thing ruined by the lighting.
Yeah.
You really want to team up with an expert that understands things like preservation and how to bring out the colors the best, and how you want the control system to operate, and maybe the shades to come down, to have these priceless works of art.
Sure.
Be good for the next generation.
Great. All right, so we have a couple minutes, about 5 minutes, for some questions. So we've got some amazing experts up here. So who has a question? Yes. Oh, here comes a microphone.
Thank you. So for Gregg, in situations where you're designing and Ketcher gets brought up, and obviously Ketcher only is available in certain form factors, it doesn't check all the boxes today. How do you navigate keeping it on the project and still working with the interiors team on some of those specialty fixtures? Decoratives typically come to mind, but I'm sure there's other applications there.
Yeah, right now, I think the most difficult thing we have on a project is doing an entire project where we can get the colors to look good together. Because so many decorative fixture manufacturers right now are going, hey, we can make this little, we have this little tiny source, and we're going to do 100 of them, and it's going to be, whatever chips they end up buying from China that comes in, and it's color of light that doesn't match anything else in the house, and it's so difficult. But I met a guy yesterday who started a company, and I'm drawing a blank on the name, but he's designing decorative fixtures that are ready for your products, and I think the more manufacturers that kind of get on board with that idea, then we give Marina the idea, the ability when somebody decides to go with a dynamic technology to be able to have a choice in decorative fixtures that can match what's happening with the other lighting. Because when you do get an entire room that's all synced up and everything's doing the same thing, it feels a lot different than it does when you have something going and it's like the broken clock where twice a day it's the same color and the rest
Sure.
of the time it feels a little bit off. So I think the design world, in the fixture design world, is getting much I guess becoming a lot more aware of this and starting to design products that the interior design team can use on the decorative side.
Yeah.
To elaborate on that a little bit, so with a Ketra project, you're going to have other light sources that are not Ketra. And it takes some inventive programming and a little thinking outside of the box on how to make that all work together. And for instance, if you have a dining chandelier with candelabra bulbs, that's not going to be a Ketra fixture. So if you don't turn that on during the day when they're just running their downlights and having the natural show running, and then it doesn't really draw your eye away from what the environment is providing for you with that natural daylight. Whereas if they walk in the room, then we just give them a double tap to bring on that chandelier to 2700 Kelvin or what have you, and then tune all of the Ketra to 2700 Kelvin static, so that room comes together once you do that double tap. So there's ways just to think outside of the box when you get into integration and programming to still make those fixtures work.
Great. Just by show of hands, how many integrators in the room are currently teaming up with specifiers in their local community? Okay, good number. Okay, we have time for probably one more question. Yes, sir. Oh, well, hold on. Here comes a microphone.
So I have a quick question on when you were referencing using separate manufacturers, you're not always going to have the Ketra fixture as part of the entire part of the home, but you want them integrated. And you were speaking about having a team that is experts, having your designer, having your manufacturer. When you get into a situation where you have separate manufacturers and you're doing the integration and controls, what support are you looking for from the other manufacturer? How can they bring value into that conversation while still being able to have a seamless integration?
In terms of what precisely?
In terms of, is it a technical support that you're looking for? Is it a manufacturer's design assistant? Are you just going to them with questions? Are you bringing them in as part of the original conversation? I'm just trying to wrap my head around when you have separate manufacturers on the same thing, how do you approach that, and what do you see to get the best results?
So each manufacturer has several different lines of different technology. They might have a DMX control, which oftentimes gives us a lot of flexibility. And if that's the case, then we'll ask them that if we can get that control. If it's static 2700 Kelvin, you don't have a ton of options. So really what we try to do, and again, I'll use the chandeliers as an example, is when we're running our natural daylight show, we'll just leave that off during the day. And if it's a crystal chandelier, we'll put Ketra downlights around it and have some reflective light coming off of that crystal chandelier, so it still feels like it's part of the environment. So you can get into DMX control and have it kind of follow what Ketra can do. It's pretty complicated, and it takes up quite a bit of programming. But now with the new Lamaris line, we now have linear that can follow what Ketra does throughout the day, which is great for us. So as the product lines come out, it's making our job a lot easier. But for the past 3 years, we have had quite a few issues with, not issues, but complicated scenarios where we need to make other examples of fixtures work inside of that environment. And typically it's DMX is the best control. 0 to 10 does work fairly well, but it's really hard to get that same color curve. So I oftentimes will ask them if we can get DMX control, and then we'll program that into the daylight environment.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, and we have 5 seconds left, so please join me in thanking Margaret, Gregg, Marina, and Andy for being excellent panelists, and we hope you enjoyed our session. Thank you for coming. And Lutron's booth is at 1912 if you are curious and learning more about intelligent lighting or about learning more about how to get some of these Lutron tools to help you team up with specifiers in your local market. So once again, thank you for joining us.